What happens when you wake up one day and realize that you have spent half of your life, or maybe even longer, taking care of everyone else? Your kids, your partner, your parents, your colleagues. Somewhere along the way, you lost track of yourself. Today's episode is about rediscovering your purpose after years and years of putting everyone else's needs ahead of your own. So many women in midlife, myself included, find themselves in this situation. We have been the caregivers, the fixers, the doers of all things. And then suddenly the noise quiets down. Maybe the kids leave for college or leave home. And then we find ourselves asking, who am I if I am not always the one taking care of everyone else? Today, we're going to explore that question. Hi, I'm Dr. Lori Bruce. I'm a clinical psychologist and mindfulness coach. I'm the host of the podcast From Both Sides of the Couch, where I talk about all things related to mental health from both the perspective of a psychologist as well as a client in my own therapy. Let's begin by talking about why this pattern is so common for women. Here are big reasons. Number one, social conditioning. From the time we are little girls, we are often taught to be good, to be helpful and selfless. We are praised when we're accommodating, but criticized when we are assertive. That early conditioning runs deep. In episode 41, I actually discussed some of the research on the different ways that boys and girls are treated in schools. So if you're interested in this topic, you might want to check that out. Number two, another reason why we lose ourselves is our fears of conflict or disapproval. Sometimes putting others first can actually feel safer than risking rejection, anger, or disappointment. We sacrifice ourselves in order to keep the peace. If you had conflict in your family of origin growing up, it might seem especially important to you now as an adult to have peace. But remember, although having peace is essential, peace does not necessarily come from avoiding conflict. Sometimes having hard conversations is the only way to ensure peace in your life. But if we didn't have proper role models for having hard conversations effectively, then we might think that avoiding conflict is the only way to go. Third, sometimes caring for others becomes an identity that we are proud of. It feels good to be seen as the helper, the fixer, or the problem solver. We might have thrown ourselves into being the best mom or the best wife. And when those roles shift, for whatever reason, we feel like we've lost who we are. Clearly, there is nothing wrong or bad with being a helper or a fixer. But we need to remember that being needed is not the same thing as having a purpose. Part of our identity can, of course, be about being a helper. I'm a psychologist, and for sure, that's a huge part of my identity. But it can't be the only part. We have to have other aspects of our identities that we prioritize and nurture. I believe that the biggest factor that leads women to lose sight of themselves and their purpose is the feeling of guilt that arises when we focus on ourselves. Guilt says you're being selfish. Who are you to want more? Or the classic, other people have it so much worse, you should be grateful. The truth is, guilt isn't evidence that you're doing something wrong. That's backwards reasoning. I feel guilty, so I must be doing something wrong. Guilt could just be evidence that you're breaking a pattern. This pattern of self-sacrifice could even be generations in the making. Think about it. Was one of your parents or grandparents a self-sacrificer, always putting their needs ahead of their own, having only the identity of caretaker and giver to others? Probably. This is just how women especially were socialized to be. Here's how we can reframe this. Taking care of and rediscovering yourself is not selfish. It's essential. When you are centered and energized, you feel fulfilled and you actually have more to give to others, not less. As they say, you can't pour from an empty cup. When you learn to prioritize yourself and your own needs and wants, you will begin to better answer the question, who am I? In fact, if answering the question, who am I, is really important to you, it has to start with prioritizing yourself. Since my goal is to both understand and to change, let's now talk about what we can do. Here are 5 ways that you can start to rediscover yourself. First, pause and ask, what do I want? It sounds simple, but many women haven't asked themselves this question in years. Start small. What do I want for lunch? What do I want to do this weekend? When someone asks you the question, what do you want? Don't just immediately respond, oh, whatever is fine. Really pause and ask yourself, what would you like? And name it out loud. Sometimes this is hugely challenging. We might realize, I don't have any idea what I want to do or what I want to eat. If you find you truly don't know, even after pausing, I want you to just pick one thing and go with it, and then evaluate after the fact. How did that feel? Was it enjoyable? Was it fulfilling? Was this interesting or entertaining? You might not know in advance what you want or think, and that's okay, but you can evaluate how it went. Over time, with repeated practice, you'll start to learn, I enjoyed this, I enjoyed that. And in time, those small issues can turn into bigger issues. Better identifying what you want for lunch can absolutely one day turn into identifying what or who you want to be in your life. Number 2, begin to practice saying no to the things you don't want. This one is also super hard for some of us. We worry about people being mad or disappointed in us. But truly finding out who we are and more about our purpose will absolutely require us to limit and say no to things that no longer serve us. Maybe you were a teacher or a daycare provider, and everyone knows you as the one who is so good with kids. But maybe you're burned out. Maybe this no longer brings you joy. You can absolutely say no when someone asks you to watch their kid. Just because you're good at something, or just because you did something often in the past, does not mean you are now required to continue to do that thing indefinitely. Remember, every no to something that drains you is a yes to your own personal growth. And as an aside, when you do say no, don't over-apologize about it. Learn how to say, unfortunately, I'm just not able to do that. Period. You don't need to give explanations or reasons or apologies. Just say no. 3, reclaim old joys or find new ones. Think back. What lit you up before life got so full of responsibilities and shoulds? Was it painting, dancing, writing, gardening, traveling? Try those things again if it's been forever since you've done one of those things. If nothing comes to mind, experiment with something new. What are your friends doing? I have a group of friends who all joined a dance troupe, and now they dance in parades and they absolutely love it. It's not my thing, but I'm super proud of them for doing this. One of those friends actually went back to nursing school in her 40s after being a stay-at-home mom for years, and now she's a nurse practitioner. How cool is that? Was it hard? Absolutely. But she did it. For me, this is how I got started on my podcast. I love to write, so I started a blog, which turned into an audio podcast, and I'm now moving into video podcasts. This is scary. It is hard for me, but it's also, in a little way, fulfilling. When someone says to me, hey, I really like this episode, I learned a lot, it makes me feel really good. Like, hey, I did that. The key here is to start small. Instead of thinking you have to go back to school for years and years, maybe start with one class. If you used to enjoy an instrument, before you invest in that grand piano or some other expensive instrument, take a couple lessons and just see how it feels. Try not to put pressure on yourself to make this grand, huge life change. Huge life changes might occur, but you can always start small and see those small changes add up over time. Number 4, practice self-compassion instead of guilt. When guilt rises up, practice speaking to yourself like you would a dear friend. It's okay to rest. It's okay to want more. My needs matter too. Notice how often you use the word should. See if you can replace it with want. Instead of what should I be doing right now, ask yourself, what do I want to be doing right now? Remind yourself we need balance in our life of wants to shoulds. Of course, there are shoulds. I don't want to clean my house. I don't want to do my laundry or pay my bills. Those are all shoulds. But life can't only be about shoulds. And you will only make that shift to adding in more wants if you can practice being kind to yourself. You would probably never sit there and tell your best friend all the things they should be doing every day. That would be unkind, and your friend would probably stop wanting to hang out with you. If you wouldn't be that way with your friend, why would you be that way with yourself? And number 5, envision a purpose beyond your role. Your purpose isn't just being a mom, a wife, a worker, a daughter. Purpose is something even greater. It's asking the question, what was I meant to do more of? What do I want my life to stand for? How would I want people to remember me? This is where we start thinking about our values. What is important to me? Our values are things like connection, creativity, adventure, intellectual curiosity, spiritual growth. If you truly don't know what your values are, go to Google and type in values card sort test. There are tons of free options available. And this exercise helps you to consider all of the possible values one might have, and it helps you begin to sort them into your highest priority and your lowest priority. Once you have a clearer idea of what your values are, ask yourself, am I living according to my values? In what ways am I living in accordance to my values, and in what ways am I living outside of my values? Think of small ways that you can begin to move towards the direction of living in alignment with your values. A few key reminders. This isn't a simple one-and-done decision. Rediscovering who you are and what your purpose is after years of putting others first is a process. Each time you choose yourself, you might feel the sting of guilt, but with practice, the guilt fades. You'll start to notice something else developing in its place. Maybe a sense of freedom, feelings of empowerment, thoughts of hope and possibility. Remember, you have spent decades building other people's lives. Now it's time to build your own. And that may not be in a huge, dramatic way. It could be in small, intentional steps that over time bring you back to yourself. So as you reflect on this episode, I invite you to ask yourself one question today. What is one small way that I can put myself first without apology this week? It could be as simple as going for a walk alone, reading a book uninterrupted, or finally signing up for that class you've been thinking about. Your purpose doesn't need to be found all at once. It can be rediscovered slowly with curiosity and compassion. You deserve to live a life that feels like your own, not just a life of service to others. Thank you for spending this time with me today. If this resonated with you, please share it with another woman in your life who might also be searching for her purpose. And remember, you are not selfish for wanting more. You're human and you're worthy. Until next time, this is Dr. Lori Bruce from both sides of the couch.